Have you ever felt lonely, even though you were surrounded by people, as if your journey was different from everyone else's? If so, know that this feeling is no accident. In today's video, we'll explore why the chosen ones often walk alone. We'll understand the deep and often divine reasons that lead to this experience of isolation and how this is directly linked to the calling you carry. The loneliness of the chosen is a characteristic that can be observed in great biblical figures. Just as Jesus faced moments of loneliness in the desert before beginning his ministry, many of us on our journey of faith are called to face similar periods. These moments are not punishments, but times of preparation and spiritual strengthening. By watching this video, you'll discover why this walk can seem so isolated and yet so necessary. We'll uncover the hidden purposes behind these experiences and understand how they mold character, deepen faith, and prepare us for a greater calling. Have you ever wondered if being alone is part of a bigger plan? Here, we will reveal how the moments of isolation are a sign that you are on a unique path, laid out by God for those he has chosen. Loneliness is a state that many people avoid at all costs, but for those who are spiritually chosen, it becomes an inevitable part of their journey. The chosen often experience a disconnection from the world around them, feeling that their concerns, values, and visions are different from the norm. This sense of separation is one of the first signs that you are on a path less traveled, a path designed by God. Being chosen doesn't just mean having a special purpose. It also means carrying the burden of understanding and accepting that your journey will be lonely in many ways. This solitude is not a coincidence, but a necessary element for spiritual development and strengthening. It creates space for reflection, prayer, and self-discovery, allowing a person to deepen their relationship with God. What many people don't realize is that the solitude of the chosen is not a punishment, but a calling. It's a divine invitation to turn away from the distractions of the world and focus on the higher purpose that God has in store. The Bible is full of examples of people who experienced solitude before carrying out great deeds, as a sign that this phase is essential for spiritual preparation. Moses is a perfect example of this process. Before becoming the leader who would lead the Israelites out of Egypt, he spent years in the desert tending sheep, in complete anonymity. This time of solitude served to mold him, transforming him from an exiled prince into a God-fearing leader fit for the monumental mission that was to come. Without this solitude, he wouldn't have had the humility and strength to face Pharaoh and lead his people. Solitude is also a moment of revelation. In many cases, it is when we are alone that God speaks to us most clearly. The prophet Elijah, in his flight and exile in the desert, heard God's voice in a soft whisper, not in an earthquake or fire. This detail teaches us that God's presence is felt most intensely when external distractions are removed and the mind is silent. Another important aspect is that the solitude of the chosen serves as a test of faith. When there is no one to support us, we can only trust in God. It is in this apparent emptiness that faith is strengthened and refined. God uses this time to see how far the chosen one's trust goes, preparing them for greater challenges that will require unshakable faith. Loneliness can often be mistaken for abandonment, but the chosen ones need to learn that God is closer than ever in these moments. It is a phase of spiritual training, where the chosen one learns to listen to God and recognize his presence in ways that would not be possible in the constant company of other people. This solitude becomes an environment of learning and spiritual intimacy. Solitude also creates fertile ground for introspection. The chosen ones are forced to face their doubts, fears, and limitations honestly. Without external voices to influence them, they can work on their self-knowledge and personal growth. This phase is an opportunity to cleanse the heart and mind, preparing to receive deeper and more divine instructions. Often, the chosen ones realize that loneliness separates them from those who don't share the same level of understanding or spiritual purpose. This can be painful, but it is necessary so that they can connect more deeply with what God desires. Constant companionship can bring comfort, but solitude offers clarity and alignment with divine purpose. This period of isolation also teaches the value of patience and resilience. God doesn't rush spiritual growth. He allows the time of solitude to last long enough for the lessons to be truly absorbed. Learning to embrace solitude, rather than resisting it, is a crucial step for the chosen one to understand the path that is being prepared. The chosen must also realize that this solitude is temporary. It is a phase of preparation which, when accepted and understood, leads to a deeper relationship with God and a greater ability to fulfill their purpose. Just as gold is refined in the fire, the chosen are polished in solitude, ready to emerge stronger and more focused on the mission ahead of them. Therefore, the solitude of the chosen is more than a state. It's a process that purifies, strengthens, and aligns the person with the divine will. Those who manage to pass through this phase with faith and trust in God find not only answers, but a new level of relationship with Him. The loneliness faced by the chosen is not a recent phenomenon. It is something documented and exemplified throughout the Bible. Every central figure who played a crucial role in the history of faith went through periods of isolation that prepared them to fulfill their missions. These biblical examples are not just stories, but are reflections of the divine process of molding, strengthening, and refining those He calls. Let's start with Jesus, one of the most emblematic examples of solitude with purpose. Before beginning His ministry, He was led by the Holy Spirit into the desert, where He spent 40 days and 40 nights fasting, facing temptations and challenges. This period of isolation was a test of His spiritual endurance and a preparation for the 3 intense years of ministry that were to come. He came out of the desert not only ready, but strengthened, showing that solitude was an essential stage in the fulfillment of His mission. The prophet Elijah is another remarkable example. After defeating the prophets of Baal and being threatened by Queen Jezebel, Elijah fled into the desert, where he took shelter in a cave, feeling discouraged and alone. At that moment, God met him not with a spectacle, but with a gentle whisper. This experience teaches us, in solitude, God reveals Himself in an intimate and personal way, far from the distractions and noise of the world. Elijah's solitude was not just a refuge, but a turning point to renew his faith and purpose. Moses, another example of a chosen one who faced years of solitude, spent 4 decades tending sheep in the Midian desert before being called by God at the burning bush. This long period of isolation served to distance him from the life of privilege in Egypt and prepare him to lead the people of Israel. God used this time to teach Moses lessons of humility and dependence, making him a leader molded by the experience and patience that only solitude can provide. Joseph also illustrates how solitude can be part of God's plan. Sold out by his own brothers and unjustly imprisoned, Joseph spent years in solitude and suffering before becoming the governor of Egypt. These years were not wasted. They were fundamental to developing the wisdom and faith he would need to save a nation from famine. Joseph's journey is a testimony to the fact that although loneliness can seem like a punishment, it can be the foundation for a greater work to come. Even David, before he became king, faced moments of loneliness while on the run from King Saul. In caves and desolate places, he wrote some of the most touching psalms, expressing his anguish but also his unshakable faith in God. These periods of isolation allowed David to get to know God in a deep and personal way, helping him to become the man after God's own heart. John the Baptist, a prophet known for his simple and separate life in the desert, is also an example of how solitude can be part of the mission of a chosen one. His powerful message and preparation to announce the coming of Jesus could only emerge in an environment where he was disconnected from the influences of the world. John the Baptist's solitude gave him the clarity and strength to be the voice crying out in the desert, preparing the way for the Lord. Paul, one of the greatest apostles, also faced loneliness during his missions. After his conversion on the road to Damascus, he spent a period in the Arabian desert before starting to preach. This time of isolation was crucial so that he could reevaluate his beliefs and deeply understand the message of Christ. Paul often mentioned in his letters the times when he felt abandoned by everyone, but never by God, emphasizing that solitude is an opportunity to draw closer to Him. The story of Noah also illustrates how loneliness can be part of the fulfillment of a divine calling. Building the ark and preaching for years without support while being ridiculed, required a faith and resilience that could only be developed in solitude. This experience prepared him to lead his family in a world that would be completely transformed after the flood. These stories not only show that solitude is a common experience for the chosen ones, but also that it is God's tool for molding leaders and prophets. It forces a person to detach themselves from the expectations and opinions of others, seeking strength only in God. Each example shows that loneliness precedes moments of great transformation and impact. It is important to realize that in all these cases, the loneliness was not permanent. It served as a period of preparation and strengthening, a necessary break before fulfilling the greater purpose. These characters came out of their periods of isolation stronger, wiser, and more convinced of their calling, showing that God was with them every step of the way. These stories also teach us that God never leaves His chosen ones without support. Even in the darkest and loneliest moments, He is there, guiding, comforting, and preparing the next step. The loneliness of the chosen ones is actually a phase of intimacy with God, where distractions are eliminated and the spiritual connection is intensified. So when you reflect on your own solitude, remember that it is part of an ancient and sacred tradition. Like Jesus, Elijah, Moses, David, Joseph, John the Baptist, and Paul, your solitude can be a sign that you are being prepared for something great. God is building something in you, even if it means walking alone for the time being. Loneliness can seem like a punishment or a moment of weakness, but for the chosen, it is a fundamental part of God's plan. It serves a purpose that is often only realized once the phase of isolation is over. This period is an opportunity for spiritual growth, self-knowledge, and to draw closer to God, away from the distractions of the world. The purpose of solitude is multifaceted. Firstly, it allows the individual to hear God more clearly. In the hustle and bustle of everyday life, it's easy for God's voice to be drowned out by the demands of the world. In the silence of solitude, the mind and heart are more open to receiving instruction and comfort. God uses these moments to communicate profound truths and reveal parts of the plan He has for the chosen one. In addition, solitude helps to build a stronger faith. When we are surrounded by human support, it is easier to trust people and circumstances. But when we are alone, we are forced to depend entirely on God. This dependence develops a faith that is not just superficial, but rooted in a genuine and unshakable trust in the Creator. It is in these moments that we realize that God is enough. Another purpose of solitude is purification. It acts as a filter that eliminates negative influences and distractions that could divert the chosen one from their path. During this period, the chosen are confronted with their own faults, doubts, and fears. It is an opportunity for self-criticism and repentance, allowing them to be molded into the image of what God wants them to become. Solitude also plays an important role in preparing the chosen one for service. Many leaders and prophets in the Bible were prepared by God through periods of isolation before taking on leadership roles. Like Moses in the desert and Jesus before the start of his ministry, these moments of solitude were used to equip them with strength, wisdom, and resilience. They emerged from these periods more ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. In this context, solitude can be seen as spiritual training. It's a time when God works on the inside of the chosen one, strengthening their character, sharpening their spiritual ears, and developing a perspective of trust. As a result, when the chosen one comes out of this phase, they are better prepared to face adversity and carry out the mission they have been given. The divine purpose of solitude also includes disconnection from outside influences that can distract or weaken the chosen one's faith. It is common for the chosen to feel a sudden clarity about what really matters in solitude. They begin to see things in a new light, realizing which aspects of life are aligned with God's will and which are just distractions. A profound aspect of solitude is that it teaches patience and waiting. During this time, God not only works so that the chosen one learns to trust, but so that they also learn to wait at the right time. Impatience can cause people to make hasty decisions or stray from their path. Solitude helps mold discipline and the ability to accept God's timing as perfect. Solitude can be a time of revelation. This is when God speaks to the heart, reveals hidden purposes, and directs life more clearly. Often, on emerging from a period of solitude, the chosen have a new vision, a renewed conviction of the path they must follow, and a deeper understanding of their mission. The fruits of solitude are not only internal. When the phase of isolation is over, the chosen often find themselves stronger and with a clear mission. Solitude prepares them to lead, teach, and influence others, not by their own strength, but because of the power and wisdom they received during this time. This reflects God's plan to use solitude to impact the world through His servants. An important detail to remember is that although loneliness can be painful, it is never without purpose. Every tear, every moment of doubt, and every lonely night contributes to a bigger picture that God is painting. He uses these moments to develop a strong character and an unshakable faith that will serve the chosen one throughout their life. Therefore, the solitude of the chosen is not a state of abandonment, but a sacred process of refinement and preparation. It is a time when God molds and prepares His servants for something greater, revealing that even when it seems that all is lost, He is at work in an intense and intentional way. The chosen one who understands this learns to embrace their loneliness, knowing that it is just a step on the journey that brings them closer to the divine purpose. Loneliness is not just a test of faith, but a powerful tool for spiritual preparation. When God chooses someone for a specific mission, He knows that they will need strength, resilience, and wisdom that can only be acquired through introspection and silence. Solitude provides a space where the chosen one can disconnect from the external noise and immerse themselves in a deep search for understanding and purpose. During periods of solitude, the chosen one is called upon to make an honest assessment of themselves. This introspection is essential for identifying weaknesses and fears that could be an obstacle to the mission ahead. Without distractions, the person has the chance to confront their own limitations and find ways to overcome them through trust in God. It is at this time that the roots of faith are deepened, ensuring that when challenges arise, the chosen one will be spiritually prepared. Solitude also prepares the heart for greater sensitivity to God's voice. With fewer outside influences and opinions, the connection with the divine becomes clearer. The example of Samuel, who heard God's voice calling him when he was in a moment of calm and solitude, illustrates this preparation well. God uses solitude to teach His servants to distinguish His voice in the midst of the chaos that will surround them later. The spiritual preparation that takes place in solitude also teaches the value of patience. The process of waiting can be challenging, but it is vital for the chosen one to understand that God's promises are fulfilled at the right time. Waiting teaches that answers don't always come quickly, and that trusting God means believing that He acts in His perfect wisdom and timing. This learning is crucial for those who will have to lead or make significant decisions in times of uncertainty. These periods of solitude often precede great changes and challenges. Jesus, for example, faced temptation in the desert as a stage of preparation for the ministry that would change human history. This experience gave him the strength to resist the adversities he would face, showing that solitude was an essential part of his spiritual preparation. In the same way, today's chosen ones go through their own deserts to be molded and strengthened. Solitude, therefore, should not be seen as a time of stagnation, but as a building phase. It forms a firm foundation so that the chosen one remains unshakable in the face of future trials. It is during this period that one learns to fully trust in God, developing a faith that does not depend on circumstances or human support, but is sustained by an intimate and personal relationship with the Creator. In short, solitude is a sacred space where the chosen one is prepared for what is to come. It is a time of refinement in which God reveals the true essence of the servant, molding him so that he is ready to fulfill his purpose with courage and conviction. To understand the role of loneliness in spiritual preparation is to accept that it is not an obstacle but an indispensable part of the divine plan. The loneliness of the chosen often occurs because God is redirecting their lives. When someone is separated, this isolation can seem like a time of loss or stagnation, but in reality, it is a time when God is preparing a new path. Separation is necessary for the chosen one to move away from influences that could divert them from the divine purpose and instead focus on the new direction that God is revealing. A classic example of this separation to a new direction is the life of Abraham. God called him to leave his homeland and his family behind, promising him a new land and a future as the father of a great nation. This initial separation was essential for Abraham to begin a journey totally dependent on God, without the bonds of the past that could hold him back. He needed to move away so that he could become the patriarch of faith and fulfill his role in sacred history. Separation can also occur when God wants to change the path of the chosen one for a greater mission. Joseph, when he was sold by his brothers and taken to Egypt, faced an abrupt and painful separation from his family. This time of isolation was the beginning of a new phase in his life, which culminated in a position of authority and responsibility. The time he spent alone as a slave and prisoner was crucial in preparing him to lead and save many during the famine. These moments of separation teach us that sometimes God needs to remove certain people, situations, or environments in order for spiritual growth and transformation to take place. The loneliness that accompanies this separation can be misunderstood and painful, but it is an indicator that God is preparing something new and greater. This stage is when the chosen one needs to trust completely in divine providence and believe that the isolation is temporary and full of purpose. In addition, separation allows the chosen one to redefine their priorities and align their life with God's plan. In many cases, it takes a time of separation to discern what is truly important and worthy of attention. God uses this separation to provide clarity and direction, and it is there that the conviction to move forward with renewed determination is found. Therefore, separation into a new direction is a phase of realignment and spiritual rebirth. It's a time when God prepares the chosen one for the next chapter of their life, where he will be their compass and source of strength. Knowing that loneliness has a greater purpose helps to face this phase with hope, trusting that the new direction will be revealed at the right time. The loneliness of the chosen ones is not just a time of silence, but often a period of deep pain. This pain, however, is not in vain. It serves as a catalyst for spiritual growth and inner transformation. It is in the most difficult and lonely moments that the chosen ones are challenged to face their weaknesses and grow stronger in faith. The pain of loneliness can bring lessons that can only be learnt in times of isolation. In the process of spiritual growth, pain becomes a relentless but effective teacher. When the chosen go through times of suffering and loneliness, they are compelled to seek answers and consolation in God. This search leads to a deeper understanding of the divine character and the discovery of a faith that does not depend on favorable circumstances. Pain then ceases to be just a burden and becomes an opportunity to draw closer to the Creator. Job's example is striking when we talk about pain and spiritual growth. He lost everything he had, his family, his health, his possessions, and faced overwhelming loneliness. Yet it was in this context that he came to know God in a completely new way. Job's pain led him to question and eventually find a deeper understanding of God's sovereignty and faithfulness. He ended his period of suffering with a renewed faith and a restored life. The pain of loneliness also teaches humility. When there is no more external support and strength seems exhausted, the chosen one realizes that his dependence must be on God. This humility is the fertile ground where genuine trust grows. It is at this moment that an authentic and robust spirituality develops, based not on appearances or moments of glory, but on the real experience of overcoming and closeness to God in the midst of adversity. The spiritual growth that comes from pain is also a preparation for future challenges. The resilience and strength acquired in these periods of solitude become essential tools for dealing with obstacles and leading others in times of difficulty. Like Joseph, who faced years of suffering before becoming ruler of Egypt, the chosen come out of these periods of pain better prepared to impact those around them and fulfill their callings. In addition, the pain experienced in solitude awakens greater empathy for others. Those who have gone through moments of intense suffering are better able to understand and console those facing similar situations. This is an essential aspect of spiritual growth. using one's own experience of pain as a bridge to help and guide others on their journeys. Pain, then, is not just a burden, but a means of strengthening the community of faith. So although the pain of loneliness is hard to bear, it is a vital ingredient in the process of spiritual growth. It transforms, refines, and prepares the chosen one for what is to come. When seen from this perspective, pain ceases to be just suffering and becomes a stepping stone to a deeper and more mature relationship with God, full of purpose and meaning. One of the most painful challenges of the chosen one's journey is dealing with the misunderstanding of friends, family, and even the community in which they live. When someone is called to follow a different spiritual path, they often face looks of doubt and comments of mistrust. Loneliness is not just being physically alone, but also feeling misunderstood, even when surrounded by people. This emotional isolation can be just as difficult as physical loneliness. Being misunderstood by others happens because the spiritual call that the chosen receive is not always visible or rational to those around them. Those who don't share the same vision or purpose may not understand why someone chooses paths that seem challenging or unconventional. However, it is in these moments that the chosen one needs to stand firm in their conviction and remember that God's approval is more important than human understanding. Jesus faced incomprehension in his own land, where people didn't believe in his ministry because they knew of his humble origins. Even his disciples, who were close to him, often didn't fully understand his words and actions. This example teaches us that misunderstanding is part of the path of the chosen ones, and that overcoming this obstacle requires patience, perseverance, and a deep trust in God. In order to deal with this lack of understanding, the chosen must learn to rely on faith and the certainty that they are following the path marked out by God, even if others don't understand. The experience of overcoming incomprehension strengthens resilience and prepares the chosen one to act with compassion and empathy, even when faced with others' doubts. After all, the true call is rarely understood by everyone, but is always sustained by God. Although loneliness can be painful and challenging, it also has a positive side that is often overlooked. For the chosen ones, solitude is not just a period of absence, but a time of God's intense presence. In silence and separation from the world, they have the opportunity to cultivate a more intimate relationship with the Creator. This time alone allows their faith to deepen and their spirit to strengthen, creating a solid spiritual foundation. In solitude, the chosen ones find mental and emotional clarity. Away from the noise of external voices and social pressures, they can hear God's voice more clearly and reflect on their own lives and choices. This clarity is essential for aligning life with divine purpose and for understanding the direction they need to take. Often, the most significant revelations and deepest spiritual insights happen in these moments of solitude. Solitude also allows for personal growth that wouldn't be possible amid the hustle and bustle of everyday life. It is a time to develop spiritual skills, such as meditation, prayer, and more focused study of the Scriptures. This period provides an opportunity for self-discovery and the development of virtues such as patience, resilience, and gratitude. These characteristics not only strengthen the individual, but prepare them to lead and inspire others in an authentic and compassionate way. Another positive aspect is that solitude creates a space for renewal. When life is full of obligations and commitments, it can be difficult to pause and recharge. Solitude offers this time of renewal, allowing the chosen one to find new strength and a sense of renewed motivation. It's a time to recognize God's provision in all things and feel refreshed for the challenges ahead. So the positive side of solitude is that it is not a void, but a fertile ground for drawing closer to God and strengthening the spirit. The chosen ones who manage to embrace solitude discover that it is a blessing in disguise, an opportunity to grow, reflect, and connect with what really matters. This phase brings a peace that can only be found when alone with God, allowing the chosen one to return stronger and more prepared for the next stage of their journey. For those who are experiencing moments of loneliness and question the purpose of this phase, it is important to remember that loneliness is not a sign of defeat, but rather a stage of preparation and growth. One of the best pieces of advice is to embrace this period with patience and faith, recognizing that it is part of a bigger plan that God is drawing up. When feelings of isolation arise, turning to prayer and meditation on Scripture can bring peace and spiritual renewal. Another essential piece of advice is to seek purpose in solitude. Use this time to deepen your self-knowledge and strengthen your identity in God. Reflect on who you are and what God is calling you to become. This introspection can reveal hidden talents, forgotten passions, and a new understanding of your mission. Loneliness, rather than being a barrier, can be the space where you find your true voice and purpose. Also remember that loneliness doesn't mean total isolation from help. Talking to others who share similar experiences can bring solace and perspective. Faith communities and spiritually mature friends can offer support and understanding, even if your individual journey is unique. This exchange can enrich your understanding and remind you that although the journey is lonely at times, you are not alone in the experience. Finally, trust in God's timing. Things don't always happen when you expect them to, but there is a purpose in every phase. By trusting that God is leading the process, the moments of loneliness become more bearable and full of hope. Knowing that this period is just one part of a bigger journey helps to keep the perspective that loneliness can, in fact, be a springboard for something extraordinary to come. The loneliness of the chosen, although painful and challenging, is a crucial phase of their spiritual journey. It refines, molds, and strengthens character, preparing each person for the greater calling that God has laid out. Going through this experience is a sign that you are being set apart for something significant, and realizing this brings new meaning to pain and isolation. Remember that loneliness is temporary and serves a greater purpose. God is not only present in these moments, but uses them to communicate profound truths and prepare you for the next step in your mission. So welcome this phase with faith and hope, knowing that it is a vital part of the divine process that will equip you to overcome future challenges and lead with conviction and wisdom. If you identified with this message, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video to continue receiving content that strengthens your faith. And to better understand why you might feel different and don't fit in, check out our next video, Marked by God: Reasons Chosen Ones Don't Fit In with the Crowd.